I did have the chance to read here in Malvern. I guess it was last fall.
Last year?
Yeah, from my newest book, and so I decided, in the interest of doing two things that make me uncomfortable, I'm going to read one brand new poem, and then I'm only going to read two poems. One's real short and one's real long. One I just wrote this past month, and one I've been trying to write for about 20 years. So we'll see how it goes. My students in this semester seem really allergic to titles, like terribly allergic. Like they just don't, they're either terrible or they don't have them. So I've been giving them all these title exercises, and one was sort of to write a bunch of sentences and then make some sort of running start titles. So this is a poem that came out of doing that with them. It's called The Pretty Lizard Breaks. See, that's what I need to do. I need to write a poem called The Love Sprockets something. So, yeah. Okay. The pretty lizard breaks its own tail off in my hand, the bloody end flinging itself back and forth so long. I can't help but think of how I have always liked my friends to be a bit sadder than me. And of how I threw away the whipped topping of my iced whatever it was in front of that Zapotec child selling green mangoes as her father slowly passed out with his accordion. And that I could not forgive her for seeing me do this. And I think of not getting to see my father's body when it was finally done, the moon leaking into that empty room, or explain how it had been far too sweet to hold, or how long I might have had to hold it. So I did spend 3 really wonderful years at the Michener Center, 3 terrible years on the highway between San Antonio and the Michener Center. Every time I get back on it, I have a little I-35 PTSD, but I arrived safely and gratefully. So I'm going to read you a long poem that is a part of the new manuscript called Freetown. And when I was 19, I decided I wanted to live somewhere besides the Midwest, and so I went straight from Wisconsin to Freetown, Sierra Leone, West Africa. And it was the first place I'd ever been outside the Midwest. And then I had the opportunity to, well, a lot of things happened. There was a coup, among others, but I had the opportunity to return almost 20 years later with the University of Iowa's International Writers Program to teach poetry in the embassy there a couple of years ago. And I tried for a long time to write about this place, which is literally and figuratively a hot mess. And it was also a place founded by well-intended white people, and of which I am one, I think. And so I've been working on this new manuscript, and this is sort of the central poem. And so it moves between a relationship I have with a very real place and very real people, and my kind of growing understanding of this idea of Freetown as being a kind of mobility, a kind of privilege, a way of thinking about race. So we'll see how it goes. Welcome to Freetown. The poem begins with a little epigraph by the fantastic poet James Michener, who I think is coming to the Michener Center this year, and you should not miss her. As if, walking alone, all places remain the same. 1. To know a character, it has been said we must have at least one detail about what they wanted. Those mornings, none of 3 sleeping dogs looked up from the red dirt shoulder where piles of rocks got hammered into piles of smaller rocks. And the children clapped, maniacs, hawking sweet gari-gari from the jacaranda shade. Honey, forget what I said about Paris. My first love was Sierra Leone, her kind exile, skin-tight jeans and stringy mangoes, her shredded cassava leaf to float the palm oil sea, those slow laterite roads. I'm not fast, but I am 19, predictable, freckled, and dripping up the hill. And so your tribal name will be White Woman Jogging. 2. Aissatou preferred the name that made her feel chosen for another time when women entered the village and were given a chair. Down and down the narrow goat paths passed the blind man with one claw clamped on his lead boy as they stagger, stomp, stumble, peacock screeching for a little dash. I followed her all the way home to the tidy clapboard tucked in behind the Paramount Hotel where her mother bleached mountains of bed sheets, and we sat there chewing roast peanuts on the stoop as the sharp stink of geraniums swelled from a row of rusty Nescafe tins to watch her aunts braid them some brand new hair. You fool, like a funkia minnow, Aissatou said, when I told her I'd always believed it grew like that. Blame it on the rain, I sang back. 3. In Freetown, you learn how to say, I keep falling down and getting up. Ade fadon igrap. And how the body? The body well, the body fine, the body be in the clothes. And how this Creole talk make a thing sound strong, the day whistling loud as if he be 40 persons. And how in another fable the pot goes on cooking as if to satisfy the hunger of the whole world. And whoever wishes to return has to eat her way back, to the sound of a pale God coughing up such a bloody small land. Joseph worked in the embassy library, and so explained how in 1792 some 1,000 freed slaves were returned, setting sail in 15 ships, and upon reaching land were commanded to clear way through the jungle until they reached a trunk of stately cotton. They fought with the British. You know how it goes. Thanks for your service. Here's a tree. Joseph never much liked the Good Intentions Paving Company. And so I told their God I'd heard of him. And in the shade, another dog gnawing his own numb leg. And down east, Kissy Street stands for hours, hands on hips, sighing, how do. An uphill station, embassy guards watch fog sneak out another half-built mansion. And if we have tasted the most delicious water in the world, and I always wanted to know more about his face. 4. Each morning, Aissatou and her pals waited, cheering as I ran on by beneath a sky the color of bitters and gin, jumping up and down, shouting, "Race-wee, race-wee, race-wee." One proverb suggests you're a big white chicken, but you don't know your weight in okra soup. So much depends upon the pot that keeps opening her mouth. Let them say, Ogri laf kenda for smell, both stink. The heart is not made of bone. I fear my friends, even you. 5. And so what's a nice girl like you doing? In the back of that cab with Joseph, it's circa 1993. Remember Salt and Pepper? Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. But when Jay first leaned in closer, it was only to ask if I believed the ambassador's question had something to do with Jay's blackness. The intensity of his rank, sexy self, his fresh bushmeat and shakabula gun, his blood, his diamonds, and the smell of elephant between his warm hands. Did he really say all that? Of course not. But must he remain a dark continent, traveling inside a dark continent already and so long puzzled? Haven't we all been moved? Haven't we glistened and spread in the blistering sun? Soon enough, we would all just pray libation upon the roots of every tree, as rebels machete down 20,000 arms, raining blood dust wherever they land. Operation Pay Yourself, Operation Burn House, Operation No Living Thing. Graham Greene, writing from Freetown in 1948, if one knew, he wondered the facts, would one have to feel pity even for the planets? If one reached what they call the heart of the matter. Maybe Tufu or Li Po would know what to say next. Floating home in my boat made of stone, boat sewn of rib, chest cinched up in a rusty zipper. Empires rise, people suffer. Empires fall, people suffer. 6. Back home, it was mostly white men who begged. The access road along Highway 41's stop-start thrum. So the one time she was black caught me shifting which demographics of shame. Her eyes writhed like grubs exposed when the grave dug too shallow. My face a bullet-holed sign in any one of those countries that keeps changing its name, then back, unsure of what to tell outside observers. That I once lived in Africa and so believed we now have more than the dark parts of our sex in common, that she'd somehow recognize me, and then we'd, what? She's shouting now, banging the glass, mouthing, please. The light was green. I could always leave. And if I had told Jay that I once let a brother stab me to a tree with his hips so as not to hurt his feelings, that I really was that nice. The elephant never spoke of how it was to be touched by 5 men at once. Graham Greene, page 121. I don't want your pity, she said furiously. But it wasn't a matter of whether she wanted it. 7. And the generator's beloved roar made light. And TV meant either football, Nigerian disco, or live from the Hajj. Brown men wearing white sheets on 3 of 4 channels. We could have been such a country. Joseph was drunk, but so was every other animal in the room. Nights pressed our thighs closer as we stared at the widescreen bolted above the bar, where the blue team star kept falling, with that look of agony, light, and again in slow motion. As when rereading Greene, I still find passages underlined. The intense interest one feels in a stranger's life, the interest the young mistake for love. Freetown of how long? Freetown of come here. He held my tree close before he climbed it. 8. And didn't I want to see the bay, you fool, like a funkiamino, where the sickle-shaped silver fish would flip themselves into my open hands? Isatu always said she knew how my money grew. And when the light-skinned girl singing Whitney Houston covers on the ferry misses her note by miles, and the dock lights dodge and burn, and the relationship between person and place moves also between person and person as bearer of race, the noun and the verb, Freetown used her words. And if on that 29th day of April, when it rained on Joan of Arc entering Orleans, and on New Orleans falling to the Union, and on the laboring mother of Duke Ellington, born Edward Kennedy in Washington, D.C., and on the collapse of the Easter Uprising, and on the bunker where Hitler marries, and on the already wet hair of a truck driver named Sutcliffe admitting to the court that he be the Yorkshire Ripper, and on Taylor, Texas, 2 inches in just 10 minutes. And up on Mount Oriole, rising even greener above Freetown, I turned and turned the shortwave for some news of the coup as the shooting clattered up through the brush. But the BBC reports only Florence Street, that the beaten man is called King, reports Los Angeles is still burning. Like all the men, Joseph had scars. Tribal markings carved around both eyes, black crescents healed into shiny parentheses. So he always looked a little surprised to still be a country, to still be alive. 10. Oh, my hyena of gratitude. So long you have followed me, shouldering what guilt of being hyena. Oh, my hyena of gratitude. On bone and thorn you feast, knowing each time we say we can't imagine, we also say we do not want to. And you don't say Freetown anymore, unless you're in trouble or dreaming how Protean she once appeared, calling down from the lunate eye of the mosque a wailing angel and an engine. You say, stranger, don't know a bad road. You say you've eaten the moon. What's the star now supposed to do? Say Aisatu still hauls her platter of fry and oranges up the biggest hill. Say Joseph, taking your pink bloom harder between his teeth, go to your Freetown. Something red always happens to your mouth when you speak that word. Say sky, the color of a young lion, color of a brave old bruise. Say your tribal name will be keep falling down and getting up. But don't say Freetown if you mean an idea and not your body. She'll kick you in the shin, and then you can pay her to braid your hair. Thank you.